For this final episode, we are joined by the founder of Allambie Orphanage, Vietnam. During the Vietnamese War, as a baby, she was found on the street and placed in an orphanage herself. She's Amerasian, which is half Vietnamese and half Black, with an American soldier father. She was then adopted into a white English family, which unfortunately wasn't as happy as hoped. Despite this difficult upbringing, she became a trained chef, gained a business degree, and started a very successful beauty business. But she sold all of her possessions, including a £500,000 home and sports car, to fund the Allambie Orphanage here in Vietnam. I'm excited to share today the story of my guest, Suzanne Thi Hien Hook.
Yeah, Allambie Orphanage. A lot of people ask me, was it something that I'd always wanted to do? And the answer, truthfully, is no. It wasn't on my radar. I was married. And really, it all came about because in 2006, I actually went back to Vietnam for the first time to see my country. And I went for just a 2-week holiday and I fell in love with Vietnam. And she was 16 at the time, and she was like, I just want to go to school, and I want to go to college, and I want to go to tourism, and I want to work in a hotel. But that's not going to happen because the orphanage she was in, the owner was basically using her as slave labor to look after the babies. So she wasn't allowed to go out. And, and she said, so nobody loves me, nobody cares about me. She asked me, can you not stay, or can I come and live with you? All I could think about was this last conversation. And I literally got off the plane, got home, sat on the computer, and then sat up all night doing research on orphanages and how to go about it. And I suddenly realized that actually what I wanted to do was actually give this girl some hope. And I decided there and then to actually open up my own orphanage. And then it was a case of, how do I go about it? So I remember phoning my ex-husband and asked him to come round because I was still living in the marital home. He came round and I sat him down and I said, look, I've just come back from Vietnam. And he was like, yeah, how was the trip? And I said, yeah, it was great, blah, blah. And I said, but I've decided I know what I want to do with my life now. And he said, what's that? And I said, I want to open up my own orphanage. And I've decided I'm going to fund it myself. And so I need to sell the house. And he was just like, uh, okay, all right. And he's like, if that's what you want to do, let's do it. I wanted Allambie to be a home, most importantly. I think for me, being a Vietnamese orphan myself and being adopted, and the fact that my adoption wasn't great, the thing is, with any adopted kid, any foster kids, any street kid, the most important thing for us is actually the sense of being wanted. We all want to belong, and that's not, everybody, I would say, that's, wants the sense of wanting to be wanted and wanting to belong. And I wanted to create a safe home environment for these kids, and a home where they knew they were safe, they knew they were loved. When you say you're adopted, their reaction is, oh, isn't that lovely, your parents must have been lovely people, you must have had a lovely childhood. And I have to say no, because to me, adoption is very much like a lottery ticket. You don't know the family you're going to, so you get this ticket, and you're either going to get the golden ticket and you're going to get an amazing family, or you're going to get the booby prize and get a terrible family. Sadly for me, I got a booby prize. You know, in war, there's always casualties. There's deaths, injuries, and the Vietnam War, the other casualty was actually orphan children. And with the mixed race children, we weren't actually wanted, because with mixed race children, obviously our skin is darker, our hair is different. And, some Vietnamese saw the American, the Americans coming in as not a good thing. And so everything connected to the Americans was seen as bad. And, there was a lot of children that were produced in the war. And for us being in the orphanage, we were always the last to get food. We were always the last to be looked after. Now, when you're found on the street, I was literally found on the street, taken to the orphanage. I was weighed. I was given a birthday. I was given a name. And that was my identity. So up to this day, I still don't know my real birthday. I still don't know my real name. And that's something that I have to live with. And that's very hard because when you don't know your own identity, you really don't know who you are. Also, the fact that I don't know how I was conceived. I was either conceived by love from a Vietnamese woman to an American soldier. My mother was either a prostitute and got pregnant, or my mother was raped. And those are the three scenarios. My mum in public would call me Suzanne because that was the name that they had given me as my English name. At home, I was called the devil's child. And every time I was naughty, every time I upset her, it was literally, "You are the devil's child." And she would literally scream in my face, "Your real mother didn't want you. The Vietnamese nurses didn't want you. Grace, you're ugly. You're this, you're that. Nobody wanted you. We saved you. You should be grateful. You should thank us. And this is how you repay us." And that was literally my life until I left home at 18. With my Allambie Orphanage Kids, it was very important to me that they knew that I loved them unconditionally and that no matter what they did, I would always be there for them and I'd always love them. I always made sure I told them they were beautiful, they were handsome, they were clever. Even when they failed their exams, I was like, "That's okay. I'm still proud of you. You tried your best and I still love you. And so, maybe next time, let's just try and aim for 1 point. And that to me was very important because what I did with my Allambie kids was I literally did everything with them that I had wanted from my adoptive parents. Before 2006, to be honest, my opinion of Vietnam was very negative because of my upbringing. I was ashamed that I was adopted. I was ashamed that I was Vietnamese. I was ashamed that I was half black. I was ashamed of my skin color. And when I went back to Vietnam in 2006, it was just, I just, I don't know, it was like this magical place that had always sort of been in the back of my mind. And it was a place that I was born, and it was a place that had a huge part in my beginnings, but I actually knew nothing about it, couldn't remember anything about it. So I was going in with very fresh, open eyes, and it was just wow, all these motorbikes, the smells, the sounds, it was just intoxicating and yeah, and it was just, even though I still didn't see anybody that looked like me, and I realized that I most probably would never meet anybody that looked like me, but I literally fell in love with Vietnam. And it suddenly wasn't this big sort of stigma. And I can honestly say that year I went on an emotional roller coaster of feelings, of discovery of myself. And at the end of that, I actually came to terms with my past. And I was actually really proud to turn around and say, "Do you know what? My name is Suzanne Thi Hien Hook. I'm half Vietnamese and I'm half Black American. This is who I am. Take it or leave it."
My last question on that is, with DNA, have you ever made any attempts to track down either your mother or father, or is that even possible? I don't know.
I have tried. Yeah, I've done my DNA. I've done my DNA test with Ancestry and other DNA sites. And it's, for Vietnamese adoptee, it's a very personal decision. And it's one that when I would say to people when they're going to do it, be prepared because it is a roller coaster of emotions. There was one point where I thought I'd found my mother in Vietnam and then found out that actually this woman wasn't my mother, and I was completely and utterly crushed. I then also found I haven't quite found my American father. We're not 100% sure if the family that I have found is the family. But again, disappointment, and it's it's one of those things that I always say when you go and do a DNA test, you are actually opening up Pandora's box. And when you open up Pandora's box, you have to deal with the consequences of that. May that be good or bad. But I know that actually being adopted I was saved. And those nurses that flew out in a war zone saved my life. It wasn't my adoptive parents that saved my life. I always say that. I always say it was actually the nurses that saved my life and and gave me that second chance. And so to me, it was very important that I give something back. My lifestyle was very, I suppose, privileged to the point where I would fly first class. You know, I lived in America for a year. I would travel to the south of France for my winter wardrobe. I would travel to New York for my summer wardrobe. I owned 300 pairs of shoes. We had a cleaner in our house. I drove a Mercedes convertible. So I had a very privileged life with my husband. At the end of the day, though, money doesn't make you happy. It doesn't buy you happiness. And for me, I realized I actually wasn't happy when I lived in Vietnam in 2007. And I realized actually all this money doesn't make you happy. You realize that actually you don't need a big house. You don't need a flashy car. You don't need 300 pairs of shoes. Actually, all you need to do is just be true to yourself and you will find happiness. And for me, getting that young girl and going onto this path of opening up my own orphanage, this young girl now is now a young woman. She's a very independent young lady. She works in one of the top hotels in tourism. She speaks fluent English and obviously Vietnamese. And she is happy. She's independent. She's a strong, independent woman.